This one's about polynomials. And a polynomial just kind of refers to a bunch of terms. And you don't necessarily need to write everything down word for word. If you want, you are welcome to, and I'll give you time for it, because I know everybody takes notes slightly different. But I know that there's going to be some things in these first couple sections that you guys definitely already know. And so it's not a big deal if you just take shorthand, brief notes, whatever. Everybody's different in how they learn. Can you see okay from that spot? Mm-hmm. Okay. I suppose if I were standing at the board, you couldn't, but. Sarge is going hot on day one already. Just kind of curious, like a quick hand to be fine, but how many of you have heard the term monomial before? Like, sort of remember it? Okay? And I know you definitely were taught it in Algebra 1, so it's not really it's not new. It was just kind of more for me to know how much you remember. Polynomial as a name, I'm losing my voice. Polynomial as a name means a bunch of terms. A term is just like a combination of letters and powers, and as soon as you have a plus sign or minus sign, that's a different term. So down on the bottom, I put some examples of them, but they could be whatever. Okay, now I said this out loud, but basically, the only way you're really going to be able to tell the difference between terms is having plus and minus signs. Are we doing tic-tac-toe already? We're 5 minutes into the hour. Okay. Is it similar? Okay. Oh, here. So this whole section, section 1, is going to be really easy, and there's not much to it. I would say that the writing down of the notes is a majority of the work. A lot of the questions are just going to be very basic, like, how many terms is this? What would you call this? A monomial, binomial, trinomial? Like there's not much actual work to do in this section. Majority of it is writing. What the heck? This is all screwed up. So the first thing we do, though, is we generally have a name referencing how many terms there are. 1, 2, and 3 terms is by far the most common. Anything above 3, we just call it a polynomial because that stands for any number of terms. Like, you may not want me to reference geometry because I know for some of you that was kind of a nightmare. You probably learned about polygons. Maybe? Oh, I was going to say, that should have been part of geometry. You probably just blacked out the proof portion, yeah. Well, a polygon just means any number of sides. So that's kind of where the poly here comes from. A polynomial just means any number of terms. We traditionally only use that word for when it's more than 3. But the word polynomial is kind of goofy because it stands for any number of terms. We only have a special name for 1, 2, and 3 because they're the most common. Did any of you guys come from Miss Larson? I'll apologize because I don't use packets. I'm sure that's going to be a large change right away. A lot more writing. There's advantages and disadvantages to packets. I'm trying them for the first time ever in Calc this year. Some people like them, some don't. I'm going to guess you guys like packets just because everything's kind of pre-written out. Without us even doing a question together. Like, we haven't done anything together yet. The fist to 5. If I asked you to identify how many terms there would be, like to name it, how well would you be able to do that without us even doing a question like couldn't? I already feel like you have it down. Okay, so it's kind of all over the place, but for the most part, good. Well, that's good to see. That kind of tells me that you semi-remember it. Plus, mono, bi, and tri is pretty self-explanatory. Like, as long as you guys know root words, they pretty much get used all different things. Now, the naming, though, isn't the only thing, which is annoying. They also will name things by the powers that are there. You can name individual terms by their degree. That's what naming by the powers is. Or you can name a whole group of terms by their powers. And this is where it starts feeling a little more confusing this is all called classification. And really the only reason we're doing this section is so that when I reference things in future sections, like when we're learning new stuff, I'm going to call things binomials, trinomials, things like that, which is supposed to help you like visualize something specifically. And that's the only reason we're doing this section is classification. Definitely the most boring section out of the chapter. Not much I can do about that, but it's kind of how it goes. Who should we go with? I need to choose a new person. What did you say your name was again? Yep.
Dylan.
Dylan?
Yeah.
Dylan. So if we look at that middle one that says 2/3 x squared y cubed, but it's labeled as 5th degree. Did you kind of already put together how 5th degree came about? Like, how did we get 5th degree out of that?
You added the 2 and 3 degrees.
Perfect. If you have more than one variable, which doesn't happen very often, but if you have multiple things that have a power, you put their powers together when you're trying to determine its degree. So like that middle one is basically considered 5th degree because there's 5 powers in total. Usually it's going to be like the first one and the last one where it's extremely straightforward. You just look at the power. Okay, nice job. Dylan? Yes.
What if they cancel out?
So the only way they would cancel out is if they're the same variable. Like, are you talking about if it's like x cubed and x to the negative 3?
Yeah.
That would be fine too, because, I see what you're saying. I've never run into that. But yeah, that's absolutely possible. Yeah, they could be different letters with one being a negative power. It's a great question. I've never run into that, but I would assume they would cancel each other out. Kind of want to look that one up now. I don't know. You guys won't ever get that. I'll definitely put it that way. So, I don't know if you want to write the whole thing down. If you really want to, you certainly can. So the last page, I'll come back to this really quick. The last page was naming individual terms. So this was like an individual monomial. This page is if you're naming the entire polynomial. Hi, you done already? No. I was going to say that was really fast.
For these ones, do I just plug in a quadratic formula?
You can. It was kind of written. These are different order. What the heck? This was page 1 before. Weird. 5 was named like that. Short answer, yes. That's fine if you do quadratic formula.
Okay.
5 was written with the directions like that instead of like this, because there's lots of ways to solve it. If you want to do quadratic formula, you can. There's other ways that were quicker or whatever that would still find the answer as well, though.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So they actually have specific names of polynomials by degree that go up pretty high. I have never once run into needing anything more than a 5th power. In fact, I'd be shocked if you guys need to know anything past cubic this year. But if they call it a constant polynomial, that means the highest power is a 0, which means there's no variables. So that's kind of automatically a monomial rather than a whole thing, but same deal. A linear polynomial is when you have a 1st degree or 1st power as the highest power. You don't have to have 2 terms. That's actually one thing I don't like about this chart. You don't have to have any certain number of terms. You can just have a single term, or you can have 2 terms, whatever's there. As long as the highest power is a 1, the whole polynomial is going to be called linear. As long as the highest power is 2, which is what we just did a whole chapter on, quadratics, that's why this chapter is going to feel like some review for sure. We'll call it a quadratic if the highest power is 2. Then there's cubic, quartic, quintic. Honestly, quartic and quintic aren't even that common in the higher math classes. And if they are, it's pretty commonly just referred to as a 4th powered equation, 4th degree. So I'm really only concerned with you guys knowing up to 3. Down below, if you do have a power higher than 5, you just list it as that number, like you just say the numbereth. So if you had a 20th degree, which means you had a highest power of 20, then you would just call it a 20th degree. You don't have to have a special name. Frequently, I'm going to call it a 4th degree and 5th degree. I'm not going to use quintic and quartic. So what's going to happen is you guys are just going to be given a bunch of terms, and then you're going to be asked to classify them. You're going to give 2 names. 1 for how many terms, 2 for the highest power. It theoretically doesn't matter what order you write them, but usually, it doesn't matter. I don't really care what order you write them. You're just supposed to identify both things. Does anybody need this page up here yet? Oh, what the heck? That's all fuzzy. I don't even know how much of this you want to write down or need to write down. I think you guys already know this. Standard form means that you write them in order from highest power down. Most of you do that naturally without even being told to, just because it seems correct. But if you're supposed to put something in standard form, that's all it means, is that you put the highest power down. Now, if you have more than one variable, there is no standard form. And I'm going to do my best. The textbook has some questions in there like that I'm just going to try to weed out. There is no such thing as standard form when there's more than one variable. They can be written in any order. Really, the only other thing I wanted you to see on here is the leading coefficient. So that's a term you're going to run into sometimes. We used it when we were trying to figure out if quadratics were opening up or opening down. We didn't really call it the leading coefficient, we just called it A. But it's going to be called the leading coefficient. It represents the number that's on the highest power. It doesn't matter if it's the first term or not, it's called the leading coefficient. But that's mainly what we use it for. We use it to figure out if a graph is going to, which way it faces. Yeah, I said that out loud, I guess. Oh yeah, we have to get trained on the electronic passes on Wednesday, and then I think you guys start using them next Monday. So no more Duracell batteries. I'm kind of bummed. I like those passes. They've got style. They're distinctive. Are we ready to move on? Yeah, I know. This is terrible. This, I don't even know if I want to put this in your notes. Because this should already be like a given. Like we did this exact same thing with imaginaries in last chapter. Right? You only add like terms. You added the regular numbers together, you added the imaginaries together, and you've already done this probably like 20 times up to this point. So I kind of feel like you probably don't need to put these in your notes. I put them in here because I know you're going to have questions on it. Kind of already forgot. Was it Ethan? No. What was your name again?
Man.
Yeah.
Dylan.
Dylan. Oh, it wasn't that far off. All right. But you're Ethan in the back corner?
Yeah.
Maybe that's where I got it from. I'll pretend that's where I got it from. Dylan, I was going to have you call somebody, but we might as well just go with Ethan. Okay, Ethan, you ready for your time to shine? So if we're looking at the one on the bottom, B, I can scroll up here too. 1 minus x squared minus 3x squared plus 2x minus 5. What's the only one thing you have to do on B to be able to like add and subtract things together?
Combine the x too.
Okay, how come? Or like, how would I combine them? Do you want some assistance?
Yes, please.
Okay, no problem. Who's sitting next to Dylan? Yeah. What was your name again? Ryota?
Yes, I'm from Japan.
Oh, nice. Okay, well, that's all right. Okay. Do you remember, can you help Ethan out there? Do you remember the one thing you have to do first? On B. On B. What the heck? There.
Take it out the
Parentheses? Okay, how do we take? I'm trying to decide. I don't want to give this one away. There's only one. Yeah. Yes, and you might have meant that too. You have to distribute out this minus sign. If you have a subtraction sign in front of a parentheses, this is like a -1 that needs to be multiplied out. Okay, Ethan? That kind of help a little bit? So this first parentheses, I don't need the parentheses anymore. What would I write for the next three things now?
-3x squared.
Good?
-2x.
Perfect.
That'd be 6 or
Plus 5. So -1 times -5. So it'd be +5. Yep. Okay, good. It's kind of weird how the harder ones are easier to actually do. And then when you get to the normal numbers, it feels more difficult. It actually happens a lot. Okay. Nah, I forgot. It's like, I'm trying to remember the abbreviation you said. It's not like Mariah, it's something like Michaela. Oh, all right, that's better than I thought. Can you just tell me what the answer would be at the end?
At the end.
What are you doing?
I can't do math in the
What?
morning. It's so hard for me. Okay, wait, hold on. It would be 1 minus 4x.
You kind of just stabbed me in the heart a little bit,
Sorry.
and you twisted the knife on top of it.
Minus 4x squared minus 2x plus 5.
Close. So you put these two together, and that was it, I believe?
Yes.
Yes. So the 5 and the 1 can go together too. Yep.
My bad. My bad. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Calculator at 1 and 5.
If you can, a lot of you probably already in the habit, but write the highest power down first automatically. Like, because when we have a whole bunch of terms, I would just immediately go to start with these and then write them down first so that it's in standard form.
Could you not add the 2 and the 2's on the x and the 3x together to the -4x to the 4th, or do you not do that? Does that make sense?
I know what you're saying. So whenever you have a number in front of a letter, that basically is just like a counter. So this is saying -1 of the x squareds minus 3 of the x squareds. So you would keep the same thing because you're kind of just counting it.
Okay.
If they were multiplied, then it would be x to the. Yep. Okay, that's it for notes. Yeah, it's not like a horrible section. I would assume you'll be done with this before you leave today, because all of it is classifying. So like you'll be given a bunch of things and say, is this monomial, binomial, trinomial, or polynomial? And then you'll have to classify it by the degree. So constant, linear, quadratic, cubic, etc. And then adding and subtracting.